7:05 here on News Radio 1140 WRVA. Certainly the conversation this week is going to be dominated by the Republican health care bill. Whether it's even going to come to a vote, that's number one. Right now, I'm not thinking there's a point of having a vote unless some more minds can be changed. Usually, and by the way, I don't think it's going to be particularly easy. Usually minds that are easily changed don't have a whole lot to say. They just kind of negotiate behind the scenes. But we've had a lot of senators, Rand Paul among them, who have been very, very upfront with their opposition to this health care bill. We've had people on both sides, people who think it cuts too much, just like we have people who think it's not nearly conservative enough. The Koch brothers oppose it. They don't think it's conservative enough. They don't think it does enough to even begin to try to control the high cost of health care. You've got moderates like Dean Heller and Susan Collins that are concerned about the so-called Medicaid cuts. Again, I don't necessarily look at them as cuts. I look at them as spending fewer or having fewer increases. Nobody's cutting what we're spending now. They're talking about fewer increases, not cuts. And, of course, the bottom line here is, does this achieve the stated goal, which is to bring down the cost of health care? Obamacare certainly did not do that. And there are those who think that this doesn't either. In other words, why would we trade one bad bill for another bad bill if it doesn't accomplish the goals? The president made a lot of health care promises during the campaign. He says he wants a bill with heart. And when he says heart, I think he's talking about more money. So how do we get this achieved? Is there anything we can do to get this passed? How do you even begin to lobby with these senators who oppose what it is you're attempting to do? Will this be one of those things where even the promises that are being made are not kept? Leslie Sorrell joins us, political strategist, the author of From Clients to Crooks. I mean, you got at least 6 people, Leslie, in the Republican side of the United States Senate that have to be convinced. How do you start to turn that around?
Well, it's always a challenge at this point because everyone wants to do what they think is the best plan and the perfect version, and it's tough, and they've got a lot of challenges ahead of them, and it's not going to be a fun week in Washington.
I wouldn't think so. The problem seems to be that everybody seems to want to cherry pick their own personal favorites.
Yes, they do. And we've got a problem where everyone wants to self-serve, and until they can put that aside, it's pretty tough for the country as a whole.
You've got 4 of the opposers who say they oppose it because it's not conservative enough, and then you have some of the moderates who think it cuts too much. So where do you go to try to meet compromise? Is compromise something that's even considered in D.C. anymore?
Well, it's considered a dirty word, but, we have to get back to the people and what is best for them. And not every solution is more money. We have to figure out what the bigger goal is and what does it look like to get the American people more involved. And again, Washington thinks the solution is always money and sometimes their interest before the country.
Leslie Sorrell, it seems to me that part of the problem with this health care bill is just like most bills now that have been proposed. They talk about a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3. Well, this is just phase 1. If we can't get phase 1 passed, how in the world are we going to get phase 2 or phase 3 passed? Shouldn't they just come at us with a final version of what they hope to accomplish with this and then either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Well, you're right. After all this time, really, a majority of the people agreed Obamacare has been a disaster for hardworking Americans. Their premiums didn't go down. They saw it rise. They can't afford insurance anymore. We got to remember why government thought they should address health care in the first place. We need patients to be able to make direct payments for doctor's visits. It needs to be consumer driven, and the government needs to restrain the cost. But instead, when the government gets involved, they make a mess of it, and now we are seeing they don't know how to undo what they've done.
Well, Leslie Sorrell, today, supposedly the Congressional Budget Office is going to come out with their reports, and we're going to find out more about what it really costs and whether or not it really has the potential to cut health care costs. If it doesn't pass muster with the Congressional Budget Office, do they need to go back to the drawing board?
They do. And, that's something Washington doesn't like to do, is they'd rather just keep going and make it more complex and messy. But sometimes the best answer is just keep it simple and start from scratch.
And if nothing gets done on healthcare, let's say we don't have a vote and it gets tabled till later, and maybe we don't get any vote on any of this before November, who gets blamed for that?
Well, the Republicans get blamed. They're the ones in charge. And, it starts with the top. They have been complaining, rightfully so, about the Affordable Health Care Act / Obamacare. But why haven't they been working on a plan? Why haven't they come up with what their solution is? Why are they just starting this process? And those are going to be tough questions they're going to have to answer to.
All right, Leslie, thanks for your time. Political strategist, author From Clients to Crooks, Leslie Sorrell, joining us on News Radio 1140 WRVA.